The chandelier lights in the grand Boston ballroom glowed softly, casting warm reflections across polished marble floors. A quiet orchestra played somewhere near the far wall, their music drifting gently through the room like a slow evening breeze. Conversations rose and fell like distant waves, calm and polite. Many of the guests stood in neat groups. Men in dark tuxedos, women in elegant dresses, each carrying glasses of sparkling wine and carefully measured smiles. At one table near the center of the room sat two people who seemed to belong to completely different worlds. The man was Robert Hayes. Robert was a 43-year-old night driver from the outskirts of Boston. His suit was simple, rented for the evening, and he sat with the careful posture of someone unused to such luxury. His light brown hair was neatly combed, and his face carried the quiet lines of a man who had spent many years working hard and raising a child alone. Across from him sat Charlotte Whittaker. Charlotte was well known in Boston society. She was the daughter of a powerful financial family, a woman whose name appeared in charity events, art galas, and business magazines. Her dark hair was styled neatly in a low elegant bun, and she wore a smooth sky-blue satin gown that reflected the chandelier light like calm water. Long silver earrings hung beside her neck, catching the glow of the room each time she moved. Yet despite the elegance surrounding her, Charlotte looked genuinely surprised. Her eyes were fixed on Robert. And Robert, with a calm but slightly nervous expression, was gently pointing toward her as if explaining something important. Behind them, several guests had quietly gathered. Curiosity had drawn them closer. People whispered softly. Some had heard rumors. Some had read headlines. But very few people knew the real story. To understand why a humble driver and a billionaire heiress were sitting across from each other tonight, we must return to a cold Boston evening 3 weeks earlier. It had been a long winter night. The streets of Boston were quiet, and a thin layer of frost covered parked cars along the sidewalks. Robert Hayes had just finished his 12th hour of driving. The city lights reflected on the windshield as he waited for his final passenger. His phone chimed. Pickup request. A private residence near Beacon Hill. Robert sighed gently, stretched his tired shoulders, and started the engine. Being a single father meant long hours sometimes. His 8-year-old daughter Emily was waiting at home with a neighbor. Robert hoped to arrive before she fell asleep. When he arrived at the large townhouse, the door opened slowly. Charlotte Whittaker stepped outside. She wore a long dark coat over an evening dress, her posture graceful but tired. The kind of tired that comes not from physical work, but from too many conversations and too many expectations. She opened the car door and slipped into the back seat. "Good evening," she said softly. Robert nodded through the mirror. "Good evening, Mom." For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The car moved gently through the winter streets. Streetlights passed one by one, casting brief golden flashes inside the car. Charlotte leaned her head back slightly, watching the city lights blur past the window. Then suddenly, she coughed. At first, it seemed small. Just a simple cough. But within seconds, the sound grew sharper. Her breathing changed. Short. Tight. Uneven. Robert noticed immediately in the mirror. "Ma'am?" he asked carefully. Charlotte tried to respond, but her voice wouldn't come out. Her hand moved to her throat. Her chest struggled for air. Robert's heart dropped. He pulled the car quickly to the side of the road and turned around. Charlotte's face had turned pale. Her breathing had nearly stopped. In that moment, Robert remembered something every parent understands. A quiet instinct that rises without warning. Someone needs help. Right now. He searched quickly through the car. Glove compartment. Center console. Nothing. No medication. No inhaler. No EpiPen. He grabbed his phone and dialed emergency services, placing it on speaker. But Boston traffic was slow that night. The operator calmly said help was on the way. Still, every second felt heavy. Charlotte's breathing grew weaker. Robert remembered a first aid class he had taken years earlier when Emily was born. A simple lesson about breathing support. He hesitated only for a second. Then leaned forward. Carefully, respectfully. Robert placed a hand behind Charlotte's shoulder to support her and gave a breath of air to help her lungs open again. Then another. And another. His movements were calm, steady, focused only on helping her breathe. Finally, Charlotte gasped. A sharp breath filled her lungs. Her chest rose suddenly as air rushed back inside. Her eyes opened in shock. Moments later, the ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed Charlotte into the vehicle while Robert stood beside the street under the cold streetlight, his hands trembling slightly. He assumed that was the end of it. But life often moves in quiet circles. 2 weeks later, Robert received a phone call. Charlotte Whittaker wanted to meet him. Now, here they were. Back in the ballroom, Charlotte set her glass gently on the table. The room seemed quieter now. "You saved my life," she said softly. Robert shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." Charlotte shook her head slowly. "No," she replied gently. "Not everyone would have stayed that calm." For a moment, both of them simply sat there, listening to the orchestra. Behind them, people whispered again. But Charlotte ignored them. Instead she smiled, not the practice smile used at public events, but a warm human one. "I heard you have a daughter," she said. Robert nodded. "Emily. She's 8. Charlotte's expression brightened. "Would you mind if I met her someday?" Robert blinked, surprised. "Well, I suppose Emily would like that." Charlotte leaned back slightly, thoughtful. "You know," she said quietly, "people spend their lives chasing money. My family certainly did." She paused, watching the room around her. "But when you stopped that car that night, none of that mattered." Robert said nothing. Charlotte smiled again. "A stranger helped me breathe again." A few days later, Charlotte visited Robert's modest home. Emily answered the door holding a box of crayons. Within minutes, the living room floor was covered with drawings. Emily showed Charlotte pictures of trees, dogs, houses, and a very colorful drawing of a taxi with her father smiling in the front seat. Charlotte laughed softly. It had been years since she'd spent time in such a simple, warm home. No reporters. No expectations. Just kindness. As the evening ended, Emily handed Charlotte one final drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. Robert, Emily, and Charlotte. Underneath it, Emily had written in careful letters, "Friends." Years later, Robert would tell Emily something she always remembered. "Life gives everyone money problems at some point," he said. "But kindness, that's the real fortune." And somewhere in Boston, in a quiet office filled with business awards and expensive paintings, Charlotte Whittaker kept one simple drawing pinned to her wall. A child's picture made with crayons. Because sometimes, the most valuable things in life are the ones that remind us how to breathe again.